Welcome to patriarchy.com, where Christian husbands become virtuous leaders. And today we're looking at how to establish healthy boundaries in marriage without alienating her, a topic that many people struggle with. Here are 3 simple keys to success so that you can get the thriving marriage that you want. Now, first of all, you need to understand that setting boundaries isn't really about saying no to things. It might seem that way, and that's how many people think of it. But actually, it's about what you're saying yes to. Let's give an example. A boundary against disrespect. You want to have a hard no to all disrespect from either of you towards the other in your marriage. Why? Because you're saying yes to a healthy marriage. So, when you are approaching the topic, always ground your no in what your deeper yes is. This means you can come into the conversation with calm, confident assertiveness. And I know that many guys are afraid to even have this conversation because they're worried that it's going to come across as harsh. But if you know what your yes is, and it's the reason you're saying no to something, then you can actually see it's for the benefit of your wife and your family that you're doing this. Remember, your authority as a husband, your authority as a father, isn't a flex for your own sake. It's actually for the benefit of your family. So you want these boundaries in place so that they can flourish under your leadership. You're doing it for them fundamentally. So that should help you understand the difference between assertiveness and aggression. You're not coming in angry and frustrated. You're coming in lovingly and confidently because you know what the deep yeses of your marriage are. So think about those first. Now, if you know what those are, then there should be zero hesitancy in you. You should know with clarity what you're saying yes to, and you should want to live that out because it's fundamentally about integrity. A guy who doesn't know who he is and where he stands is not going to be able to hold the line on what matters most in his marriage. This is why my approach to marriage is that ultimately it's grounded on the man. The man, as the leader, has to take ownership and responsibility for what he wants to improve. Yes, God ultimately is the foundation for your marriage, but you, as the leader, the man, have great responsibility. So your integrity means that you have to go into this battle for your family with zero hesitancy. So clear that up first. Otherwise, your wife will feel it when you try to make those changes. They don't actually know what you're asking for or why. And that's a problem. A woman can't fully follow a man who's in his own way. Make sure as well that you are doing this with clarity and empathy. You need to be clear on what you want and why so that she can also know with clarity what those expectations are and what they are for. Now, if it does involve saying no to some things, let me give an example. A guy who wants to say no to having phones in the bedroom because he believes it's important to have a strong connection with his wife, that the bedroom is a technology free zone. He should empathize with her a bit because perhaps she likes to wind down using her phone, just scrolling in the evenings. So to her, at first, it might feel like this is a painful imposition. There could even be some addiction there. So he has to empathize with her perspective, see it how she does, and then get her inspired by why he wants to make this change for her benefit to make the marriage better. So know with clarity what you're asking for and get her to see why. So empathize with how it would look to her when you first ask it. Now, the next thing is I framing. When you actually come in explaining with openness and a bit of vulnerability what your feelings are, why these boundaries are a priority to you, it makes it much easier to have the conversation because you're not going in with what can feel like an attack on her. Let's use the phone example again. You always have your phone out in the evenings in bed. Now, she might feel under attack because of that, start to get defensive, and then in a way, the conversation is shut down before it even starts properly. Instead, if you openly say that you have been feeling that a stronger connection between the two of you would be good, and that you also feel that the phone is getting in the way of that, and here's what you'd like to change, because it's focused on what you've been feeling and you're inviting her to actually see how it is to you and what your priorities are, That's a much easier conversation to have. You haven't come in making her feel like a bad person. You haven't come in criticizing her as a wife. You're just talking about your feelings. And it's hard for her to say, no, you're not feeling that. So, as a starting point, talk about your feelings. What you're doing there is inviting dialogue. You want to have discussion with her, and that's a form of connection. If you can show that you can pay her that attention, listen, try to connect with her verbally, then it's a form of cherishing her and appreciating that kind of dialogue with her. Blaming is not going to be anywhere near as effective, but sadly, that's how many guys do start the conversations. Now, think of it as an invitation to her to get on board with your vision for what your marriage should be. That's critical. She should feel it as an invitation to something better, not as mainly an accusation against her that she has been letting you down. So if you haven't actually given her the clarity to actually see what your vision for the marriage is and got her excited about it, see that as a leadership problem. Put the emphasis on yourself rather than on her. And this is something you should know as a principle in scripture, the idea of removing the beam from our own eye before worrying about the speck in someone else's. You, as the man, focus on yourself first. You are the foundation. If you've got any questions on anything so far, drop them in the chat. I'll get to them shortly. So we've looked at two powerful techniques to be able to establish boundaries in marriage. Let's look at the third one. Consistency. We could even turn this into a motto, right? No masculinity without consistency, because people need to know where they stand with you. Some guys wonder about how to build trust. And really, the best way to build trust is by showing it over time, showing what you want over time. So she gets to know what the lines are, what results they produce, and what the point of them is. Aristotle makes his point about training kids as well. He says that to begin with, they might not want to behave the way you tell them to, but with consistency, with time, they will see that actually it makes their lives better if they do this. They do it first without full understanding, then the experience gives them the insight. Oh, that's why he wanted to limit screen time. That's why he said not so much candy, things like that. Now, a common mistake guys make is by mainly just focusing on the words alone, saying what they want rather than actually showing it. So your actions must match your words. And in fact, I would remind people to bear in mind that the actions often teach even better than the words do. This is a really common frustration that wives have with husbands. He says one thing, he does another. He talks about the importance of respect, but he's disrespectful towards me. Now, if you've got that basic disconnect, yes, in principle, you're still saying the right thing, but does it really hit home in the same way that it would as if you were actually living it out properly? No, obviously not. You have to bear that in mind. And you can think of examples where you felt that way about leaders that you have been under in other areas of your life too. It's just a basic point. Think about a dentist with bad teeth, for example, or a financial advisor or planner whose own financial life is in a mess. Or it could be a gym coach who's really out of shape. Yeah, he can tell you the right advice, but does it really hit in the same way? Does it inspire in the same way? No, of course it doesn't. So, really, what this comes down to is that when you have thought for yourself about what you want, why you want it, you've communicated that vision to her in a way that is inviting her to get excited about it, and you've inspired her. The next thing is make her feel secure and safe by reliably carrying it out. And over time, that reliability is going to actually lead to clarity. So let's have a quick recap then on the three things that we've covered so far, especially if you join late. And remember, any questions about this, just put them into the chat. I'll get to them in a moment. Assertiveness versus aggression should be your initial mental framing. Know what your yeses are, and those are going to tell you automatically what your no's are. But the yes is also the deeper grounding of the no. You have to be open about what you've been feeling that you're unhappy with, that you are acting on. So let's say you've noticed that you and your wife have been fighting more recently, and the tone is starting to get disrespectful and unhelpful. Now, you feel that this isn't good for the marriage. That's what you're focusing on, your feelings. And she can't say you're not feeling that. That's a much better starting point than you just saying, you are always disrespectful to me. Because she can say, hey, that's not true. I don't feel like I'm being disrespectful. I wasn't at this time and this time. So start with a bit of vulnerability and openness about yourself. And then also, no masculinity without consistency. You have to be the one who leads by example in carrying this out. Now, if you've enjoyed some of the simple tools for success that we've outlined so far, then if you go to patriarchy.com/start, you can join the Patriarchy Project, where we cover topics like this in more depth. You get weekly Zoom calls with me, and we have courses on everything you need to grow as a leader. You're also surrounded by men who are walking the same path to give you extra support, and we believe this is great value. It's $7 a month, and most guys are blowing far more than that on OnlyFans subscriptions that are making their marriages worse instead of better. So if you want to sort yourself out, we'd be happy to have you and look forward to getting to know you better. One area where I think boundaries cause the most tension is actually finances. I've lost count of the number of couples that I've helped where disagreements over money are the main thing that are making the marriage go into bad territory. And time again, what I notice is that the man hasn't actually communicated clearly what he wants. The woman doesn't actually know what she's supposed to be spending per month. Sometimes the guy isn't even monitoring it. There's been no initial discussion to give clarity. The next thing is the man doesn't fully understand what the woman wants to spend money on, why, and what all the different needs are, especially with a large family. So he needs to actually empathize with her point of view and maybe ask some more questions about why she's been acting the way she has. Starting off with a bit more curiosity rather than always going in on the attack makes a big difference. Now, she might feel that he's just being miserly or too controlling because she can't see what the no is actually giving a yes to further down the line. So in many cases, the man hasn't actually explained what the point of the boundary is. Where are you trying to get to as a couple? And in some cases, it's the guy doesn't want to have to spend all hours working to support the family. And he's trying to develop a passive income stream through investments. So if he says, look, the reason I want to do this is so that I don't have to work so much and we can have more time together, but we can't get to that point unless we actually put more money aside to go in and fight for us working 24/7 as an asset. And she's thinking, oh, I see the point now. Now, that point about the clarity and also empathizing with her and having a vision turns it into no longer just a fight, but an alignment of priorities. The boundary is there to help the family flourish, and what you're aiming at is an alignment of priorities. So that's just one example where the 3 tactics that we've covered could be really helpful based on situations that I've seen in the couples that we've helped. If you've got any other questions about the material so far, drop them into the chat. I'm going to start going through the ones we've had already. What kind of visions do you mean? Well, fundamentally, why did you get married? On a natural level, marriage is for procreation, so having and raising children. So let's say you're talking about boundaries regarding discipline or how you to model what good interactions should be so that your family can actually grow in virtue by watching you two. So you're saying, I don't want disrespect between us because I don't want the kids to see that, because my vision for our family is actually that we are role models that our children can aspire to be like, and then try to live out in their own marriages what they've seen from us. So I hope that answers your question. If not, drop another one in the chat. But a vision is basically showing why you're doing what you're doing. Make it exciting. Make it appealing. Now, we've also got another question here. What do you do when she is rude to you? Well, first up, it depends what kind of rudeness it is and what it's about. One of the best bits of marriage advice that Aristotle gave is that a man should pass over trivial or unintentional errors from his wife. Now, if it's not a big deal, or you think it was just a slip of the tongue because she was snappy or overwhelmed, then I wouldn't make much of a big deal of it. Maybe don't even call it out in the moment. Talk to her about it later. But in general, if you're noticing rudeness, then it's part of the point about disrespect that I mentioned earlier. So most guys are going to have that as a boundary, hard line against disrespect. And it needs to be a conversation in calm moments about why that is, and then get her on board with that. There are other streams covering exactly how to have hard conversations and how to deal with conflict. So if you go to the playlist for these masterclasses, you'll find a whole session just on that, how to deal with rudeness. But the principles are the same. Know what the boundary is, know what it's there for, get her on board with that vision. I'm going to sub to the website, smart move. If you're enjoying this content, then we go into more depth on the same content and have deep dives on exactly this to help you out more. Profound but simple, especially the yes point, sums it up perfectly. Yeah, it's interesting. People want there to be really complicated tricks. But actually, just like with anything else, excellence in marriage is really about excelling at the fundamentals. You talk to really wealthy people, they'll talk about the importance of spending less than you earn for decades to build wealth. And basically, that sums up wealth building perfectly. Same with going to the gym, right? Consistency over time on the basics is what gets you to where you want to be. Any examples of boundaries we should set proactively before marriage? So, even before you are dating, just as a single guy, you should have boundaries about what kind of behavior you tolerate from people. And if you think about it, you do. If someone is going to lie to you or try to cheat you out of things or swear at you or anything else that you can think of that you don't want because you know it's disrespectful to you, you already have boundaries. You have boundaries with your friends because you know it's going to make your friendship better. Now, when you were thinking about boundaries in dating and engagement, it's going to be things from the man, first of all, like leading in chastity. So, actually obeying what the rules of the church are regarding intimacy before marriage, no sex before marriage. So, you're making a point there about what the moral standards are. You're also going to have to deal with things like arguments, too. That happens even before marriage. You could even argue it happens more because you haven't got the grace of the sacrament to actually help you overcome each other's defects better. So I think actually very similar boundaries, other than the practical ones to do with actually running the large family, should be there before marriage. So think what those yeses are. Do you get to interact with Will pretty often on the website? Yes, I'm active in the group, and we also have the weekly Zoom calls with me for the deep dives. That really is the whole point of the group, so I can help teach guys better. What do you do when your wife avoids or refuses to talk about the financial challenges that must be addressed? Well, that to me sounds like there needs to be some curiosity and some empathy. Don't start with anger. It doesn't seem like the obvious thing, if there are challenges, to want to avoid them or refuse to talk about them. Because if there are challenges, it's going to be making life more difficult. And we actually want to get solutions to those difficulties. So, first up, just say you've noticed that she seems to be avoiding this or trying to shut down the conversation. And you want to find out more about why that is. Don't be angry, be curious. And then you can get her to open up, but you have to make her feel safe to actually do that. Maybe she's afraid because she thinks that if she shows you how bad things have been on her end for the last few months, she might feel really ashamed of herself, like she's let you down, and you're going to lose your temper. A lot of this depends on context. Sometimes a massive amount of damage has been done for months, even years, that can erode trust because the man has gone about things in the wrong way. So start with empathy, have curiosity, and then once we've got that, we're down to clarity, what the vision is, and getting her on board with where you need to be. Many guys who have been in that situation, in my experience, have got there because the wife has been basically without supervision, running up huge bills on credit cards, hasn't had clarity from the man before. They got into a mess, and the man then blames her, seeing himself as a victim, whereas actually what's happened is weak leadership from him has got them into that situation. And don't hold her to the same standard you would hold a man to. Aquinas makes this point about women being weaker in temperance than men are, and they're more prone to impulse purchases about stuff that makes them feel good in the moment. So you should actually say, I get why you're doing this, right? You just want us to have a nice grocery shop, or you want to have fun experiences, and that's good. I want those too, but we have to have them in a way that actually fits with what our vision for what we want to achieve in the future is. So I hope that makes sense. The cherished daughter watching from Cairo, glad you could join us. Let me know if you got any questions about this. Okay, guys, so we got through most of the questions so far. If there's anything else you want to know, then feel free to drop that in the chat. Happy to get through them. Just want to say that if the content has been interesting to you, then we're doing a deep dive on these same principles, but with more on how to apply them practically to your situation. So this will be day 2 of this masterclass, and I'll get more hands-on with you, taking questions in a lot more depth about what's been happening in your marriage, what you're unhappy with, what you want solutions to. So it's really about application of the tools, and this is only for members of the Patriarchy Project. So go to patriarchy.com, sign up there, and we can start attacking those problems tomorrow and getting you the same solutions that have worked for the other guides in the group. So far through our Q&A, we covered a couple of things. We're looking at the importance of expressing your needs with confidence. We also know that it's really critical, despite what the culture says in some areas about it not being masculine to express feelings. It's actually strong, right, for a leader to say what he's feeling and communicate that vision to the people that he's trying to benefit. Your authority is for your family's benefit. So if you're feeling concerned about finances, for example, you say that. You show where that concern comes from, and that is what's going to ground what you're going to say next. You don't say, you are always bad with money to your wife, or you are an idiot. You say, I'm concerned about our finances because here's what I want to happen, here's why. And we don't do this on a Monday to kick the week off. And then by the time the end of the week rolls around, Thursday, Friday, you've forgotten all about it, right? Nobody's going to take you seriously if you act like that. It has to come from a deep place of integrity for you as a man. No masculinity without integrity and consistency. You must know where you stand. People must know where they stand with you. Look, when God gave us boundaries in the 10 Commandments, why did he do it? Because it's good for us. The 10 Commandments are basically a blueprint for how to help us flourish given our nature as rational animals. So you, in giving boundaries for your family, are basically trying to do the same thing. It's how everybody's going to flourish under your leadership. Don't feel bad about doing it. All right. Couple more questions here. Do you have recommendations for suspected ADHD in wife and children? Well, first up, I would consult with a specialist. Make sure that your suspicions are in fact true, right? It's always good to get an extra pair of eyes to look at a situation, because maybe they will see with far greater clarity and depth what you are only seeing inklings of, because you might not know the symptoms in the same depth they do. So consult a specialist. The other thing is, you can have a look in some of the free material available online about simple practical strategies to use for helping wives and kids with ADHD, and actually introduce that right now, because you might see immediate benefit from it. And for the guys I've helped who have wives with ADHD, boundaries is often a great place to begin, because people with ADHD really benefit from clarity and structure. So let's say you're a guy watching this who thinks his wife is feeling overwhelmed and disorganized and close to burnout, and he's thinking, well, I think I've noticed a few ADHD traits here. Ask her what she finds most overwhelming, when and why, and talk with her about how you two together can make a plan to alleviate some of the burdens. We've been talking about finances a lot today because it's such a common area of conflict where boundaries haven't been established. Sometimes automating payments and having multiple accounts so things are easier to keep track of. That is one of the best things that can reduce the mental load associated with finances, trying to keep track of everything the whole time, not going over certain budgets. Having automations and having multiple accounts can immediately make that feel better for someone who struggles with it. So let me give you an example. Perhaps you're a sole income provider for a family and you know the figure that it's okay for your wife to spend month to month so that your family can get to where it needs to be financially over the long term. You put that amount into a spending account for her and you say, guilt-free, whatever you want, you can spend this money. What a relief for her. It's clear and she knows what to expect month after month. And that could make the difference between her feeling very stressed and then her feeling like there's some kind of relief for her. Okay, now we've also got here another comment. The cherished daughter again. I know this channel is aimed at men, but it's so healing and uplifting to listen in on discussions between men who take their masculinity seriously. That's a really nice comment. Thank you for that. What we are about at patriarchy.com is actually trying to get men to understand that patriarchy, contrary to what they might have been told in the media, isn't toxic. In fact, it's actually tonic, right? Tonic, not toxic. It is energizing for men, healthy for men, and also for women. Jane Austen shows this in her novels, right? Men more often fail by not being patriarchal enough than they do by being too patriarchal. The crisis of masculinity in society today that starts in families is actually that men have abdicated authority. They aren't using it in the way they are supposed to, in the way it's their duty to benefit their families. So when you, as a man, see yourself as the protector and the provider, you have to think about that financially. You have to think about that psychologically and spiritually as well. So your wife and kids need this from you. And by doing it, you actually develop your own masculinity too. It's for their benefit, but it also benefits you as well. Okay, we've covered all the material that I wanted to today, and just want to make sure everybody knows that if you have found this beneficial and you want more of it, head over to patriarchy.com, click there, only takes a few seconds, and it opens up a whole library of resources that can help you grow further in this direction. And remember, for day 2, we're going to be looking at deep dives on your specific situation, handling problems in your marriages. Thanks for joining and watching live. We'll be back with another one of these masterclasses soon. Take care. God bless.